Peterbot has just pulled off the most insane snakening of all time. He has just stolen the FNCS winner Poyo and is now playing trios with him and Cold. But the remaining players, Ritual, Acorn, and Aegis, will not sign the papers to officially disband their trio. So they're being held hostage and are being forced to play the LAN event with their old trios. There is so much to talk about. I'll give you the full details. I got to talk to both sides of this. I got all the pros in a call, and we discussed why they're doing this and what it means going forward. I also want to talk about the new tournaments this season. Is NA East coming back? Are console cash cups cancelled? And how do the new divisional cups work? There's a lot to talk about. Let's jump into it. Before we get into talking about the new season, we have to talk about the even bigger news. The top 2 teams on NA have just split up. But it gets even crazier. They will not sign the disband forms, so they're still going to LAN with each other. They're just not going to play the next 2 seasons together. So this is crazy. It is insane, but I promise you, it is not clickbait. It's not impression farm. I've just spent 2 hours on my Twitch stream talking to all the people involved to make sure I get the full picture of exactly what's going on. So Pete, Cold, and Poyo are now a trio, and then we have Acorn, Aegis, and Ritual as a trio. But Acorn, Aegis, and Ritual did not want this to happen. They did not want to split up as a trio, so they're not going to sign the disband forms. They're basically going to keep Pete, Poyo, and then Cold locked into their trios. So let's talk about the rule first for how this works. Once you qualify for LAN, you have to reach out to Epic and formally disband your trio. All 3 of you have to reach out, otherwise you are still locked to LAN together and you are ineligible from qualifying with another team. The cutoff date for this is in April. It's right before the second FNCS starts. It's a couple days for FNCS trials. So even though Pete has announced that him, Poyo, and Cold are going to be trioing together, that means they cannot qualify for LAN together unless the other 3 members agree to split up. Originally, Peterbot tweeted out that everyone agreed to sign. Turns out when I got to the bottom of the story, that is not true. Acorn, Ritual, and Aegis never agreed to sign the forms. And there's a couple different reasons for why this is. So Pete wants to IGL now. He thinks that he wants to go back to IGLing. He specifically said that while he does think that Ritual played the worst on their trio, he didn't sell his grands like everyone's saying. He just wants to have more control over his placements again. He wants to go back to IGLing. And if he's going to go back to IGLing, it makes no sense to stay with his trio with Ritual. It makes more sense to pick up Poyo. Now, Acorn, Ritual, and Aegis have said basically that the reason why they're not signing the forms is because they're not really okay with the fact that Peterbot just keeps ruining trios to make himself do better. They said, look, business is business. If you think you can do better with a better trio, that's fine. But what they don't like that Pete's doing is kneecapping other trios. He's trying to take Poyo off that trio and become an IGL, which leaves that trio worse off. A lot of people are saying Acorn and Aegis could just pick up Bolts, which would make them a tier 1 team as well. Sign the papers. You guys pick up Bolts, you still dominate. We play with our trio, we dominate. But Acorn Aegis were quick to say that's not fair to Ritual. The main person who's getting screwed in all of this is Ritual. Let's say both the teams disband. We get Pete, Poyo, and Cold like they want, and then we have, let's say, Acorn, Aegis, and then Bolts. That's 2 tier 1 teams. Ritual's left looking for players now, and most of the players already have their teams. He could create a Snakening, but as everyone in the call was saying, those are pretty much all the tier 1 players in the region. There's some other good players, but most of them are already in established teams. Clixie, Omzo, and Batman Booger, they've said they're not splitting. Badil, Cooper, Sphinx, they've said they're not splitting. So it kind of leaves Ritual without playing for anyone. So I do respect that Acorn and Aegis, one of the main reasons why they don't want to sign this form and they don't want to split, is they don't want to screw over Ritual specifically. They did also say that while they do think Pete's trio could be good, we haven't seen Pete IGL yet in trios. We haven't seen how they could perform, so Pete might not even do that well and want to go back to playing with someone else anyway. And if they sign the disband form, they're giving up their uncontested job spots for the next couple seasons. If your team's qualified for LAN, I've talked about this before, you basically get to pick whatever job spot you want on the map. And right now, with the new season, there are some insane mythic job spots that I'll talk about a little bit later in the video, but they don't want to give up their spot being able to get one of these guaranteed uncontested, because if they sign the forms, that means Clicks and Vidil's team will officially qualify for LAN. Clicks will be qualified for LAN if both teams officially disband. But by doing that, they would then give up their LAN spots for Pete to maybe split up with his trio anyway. They're saying, how do we know Pete's not just going to split up with this trio now? What if Cold and Poyo don't work? What if he decides he doesn't want to IGL? They basically said we can't just let Pete keep doing whatever he wants with every trio in the region. Someone has to put a stop to it. Now, it's pretty crazy. It's insane that I'm even describing this. What a lot of people are saying is going to happen is if those players don't sign the papers, they're going to play the next 2 FNCSs without each other and then go back together for LAN. And all 6 players have agreed that they're happy with that. they're fine with that. The vibes might be a little bit worse, but they still think they will do well at LAN, even if they haven't played together for the next 2 seasons. So Pete is saying that worst comes to worst, I get Poyo and Cold on my trio for the next 2 seasons. We win both of them. We go back to original trios for LAN, and he thinks he'll still win it, which I had to ask, then why don't you just stick with Ritual? But Pete was saying he wants to IGL, whatever. Acorn's team said, look, we're cool with that as well. If Pete's team doesn't do well, we just go back to our original trios and we play it out. If Pete's team does do well, we're still going to come second, which by the looks of it is basically what Pete's saying we would have come anyway. It's such a weird situation. It's hard to get your head around unless you can really put yourselves in the shoes of a Fortnite pro, but they're genuinely going to play the next 2 seasons with new trios and then just go back together again for LAN. The other option is Pete doesn't do particularly well as an IGL, or the trio doesn't work. They don't end up disbanding, and both trios go back together anyway. They've got until the start of FNCS to decide. If they don't sign the papers by the start of FNCS, they will be forced to play to LAN together whether they want to or not. Obviously, if both teams disband, that could create some other cool trios as well. We haven't talked about that too much, but after talking to both teams involved, there's pretty much no one they're willing to play with other than the people on those 2 trios. Maybe Bolt, because Bolt said he's locking back in on the game, but pretty much both sides have described the fact that they're happy playing with only other people from those trios. But the one thing it does cause for Acorn's team is the double IGL situation, because Pete's switching roles. That's what makes this so ugly, because he's going from being a fragger to an IGL, because obviously he IGL'd in duos, but duos is a little bit different. Acorn point out the fact that he had a forecast tower every game. He had the medallions, questioning whether he will be as good as an IGL in trios, which is yet to be seen. But it means that Acorn and Ritual will be playing on the same team as a double IGL trio, paired off with Aegis. They said they're not too worried about that. Ritual can slot into more of a support role, or Acorn can go support and Ritual IGLs. They still said they think they're going to be, you know, that still makes them the 2nd best trio in the region, if not the best, but they question whether Pete will do well. And Pete himself said that he thinks he's going to win everything, but if he doesn't do well, we'll just go back together again. That is where we're at right now. It looks like when the Trio Cash Cups start, which isn't for like a couple more weeks, I'll talk about exactly when they start in a little bit, but we got a little bit to figure out. Pretty much we're gonna have to go off scrims and eval cups, I guess, to see who's better. And I don't think placements in that is really gonna tell them who's actually good enough. I think we're gonna have to see both these trios play for at least a few weeks, unless somehow in the DMs or they sort something out, they message each other and they figure something out. This is the weirdest situation we've ever seen. And all I know is EU is laughing right now. The definite situation to come out of this is EU is very, very happy, because right now the NA teams are just making their chance of doing well on LAN worse and worse. They could still pull it back. They could still do well. Acorn's team just won FNCS, only having formed like a week or 2 weeks before Grands. It's happened before, but EU's real happy right now. I did want to clear up which of the new trios are real and which ones are fake, because there's been a lot of impression farming going on right now. So Clicks, Batman, Booga, and Yomzo are officially still playing together. That is fake. They are not splitting up. Any tweets you saw about that are not real. But we do have some new trios. So we have Rise and Muzz confirming they're no longer playing with Yapko, and they'll be playing with Kanata instead. So we now have Rise, Muzz, and Kanata. And then we also have Yapko now going to play with Bolt and Rapid. Apparently Bolt is back. He's fully grinding. He's locked in. He is not doing meme coins. He is going to be playing Fortnite alongside Yapko. Those are like the 2 main trios right now. There's going to be some more that potentially change. Now, Vidil, Cooper, and Sphinx have just announced they're moving to EU to play on EU, but there are now rumors they might play on NA. We might have Vidil staying on NA. Their drop spot at Mars Meadows is looking really, really solid. I think the team is worried about if they go to EU, whether they can actually lock it down, whether they can actually hold it. But on NA, they know they'll get an uncon most likely. It has a new vault. It also has the new black market nearby. Again, I'll talk about that in another video, but it looks like they're going to be staying in NA potentially. There are a few other trios that are talking about forming, but those are the main trios we think we have right now. All right, enough of that. Let's talk about what's going on with the new season. Now, I've got a couple questions I have to answer that a lot of people are getting freaked out about. Is NA East back? No, and I'm sorry. I know you guys got confused by the blog post. I'm not blaming you. The wording of this blog post was terrible. They made it sound like NA East was coming back. It is not coming back. If the competitive rules are officially out, there is no prize pool for NA East. Secondly, there is no more victory cups. A lot of people again saw victory cups in the blog post. The reason why they described them was because there's now a new way of tracking events in the compete tab, and there is a tab for victory cups, but it doesn't have any tournaments in it like the victory cups you're expecting. All of the tournaments, the formats, the schedules, everything is the same from last season. I think it's the first time we've ever seen this, where they've just copy and pasted the season. All the same tournaments at all the same times, all the same formats, and all the same prize pools. There is nothing different to competitive pretty much. As of right now, I can't even see PlayStation Cups. I see no PlayStation Cups listed. A lot of people saw the fact that there was zero build tournaments in the blog post. Again, the zero build cups would just be like the skin cups and OG cups. There's not actually prize money OG cups. It looks like right now there is just no console cups in general. Some could be added later, but if they said all the format is the same, then I'm not holding my breath for any crazy tournament changes. As for the start of the actual tournaments, we have the Eval Cup starting on the 25th. That's our first tournament starting in a few days, but it's one of the longest breaks we've ever seen until we actually get other tournaments. So we have the Trio Cash Cups, the first one of the season, starting on March 5th and 6th for the divisional cups, and then we have the Solo Cash Cup on March 7th. So it's actually one of the longest breaks we've seen in competitive. We pretty much have no tournaments for about 2 weeks except for the Eval Cups, and the only way to play in the Eval Cups is if you're Division 1. That's the next question. What is happening with the divisions? We got some further clarity. So if you made group stages of FNCS, if you made the heats, you are staying in Division 1. But that's going to be about 300 players on the big regions, and it's going to be about 200 players on the small regions. So the next up to 600 players are staying in Div 1, so an extra 300 in the big regions and 400 in the small regions. The way they're deciding those remaining players, so if you got group stages, you're still in Div 1. If you didn't get group stages, they're going off the next most consistent players from the divisional cups and the FNCS trials. So if you're on E or NA and you're in the top 300 most consistent players from those tournaments that didn't get to groups, you're going to stay in Division 1. And for the smaller regions, it's going to be the top 400 because there's less groups. Outside of that, if you are in Div 1, but you aren't in the top most consistent players, you're getting dropped back down to Div 2. You are going to go down to Div 2. They have also mentioned, though, there is going to be twice as many people making it out of Division 2 to Division 1 each week. So we're going to get way more players in Division 1 for FNCS and also just for the divisional cups, which I don't really know how to feel about this. It was already a W key fest right now. You have Peterbot's team and other teams dropping like 40 bombs in Divisional 1 tournaments. There's no skill-based matchmaking. They were very, very quickly turning into just complete W key fest. So I'm not super thrilled about this. I like the fact they're deranking some of the players, but it does still seem like it's gonna be way too easy for Div 2 players to get up into Div 1 who just aren't on the same level as the top players, which is fine. I like the Divisional Cup format. It makes it really good practice for Div 2 and Div 3. I just think Div 1 needs to get skill-based matchmaking. We have skill-based matchmaking in the Solo Cash Cups, which only has 600 players. Why are we not having skill-based matchmaking to the divisional cups that also has 600 players? Like, yes, it makes the queues a little bit worse, but at least it's the best of the best teams going at it. It's not just who can drop more 40 bombs. It doesn't feel like the biggest tournament every single week, and most of the big pros are qualified after one day. They're playing the day 2 for absolutely nothing, which means they just run through the lobbies. There's no skill-based matchmaking, so the entry-level Div 1 players just aren't even getting proper practice. They're just trying to avoid versing the pros, so most of them are just going and playing Division 2 anyway. So I really hope Fortnite does something to fix up the divisional cups, because I just don't think they're working as well as they could right now. This season is looking absolutely insane. We have a whole bunch of new POIs. We now have vaults that have cryptocurrency in them. You take that or the gold to these black markets and you can buy like mythic weapons. You can buy medallions. We now have Shogun X, the boss, dropping a medallion that every time you pop meds, you drop a shield bubble. We have one-shot headshot snipes back in the game. We have new weapons. There's a whole bunch to talk about with the new season, but as always, I want to play around with it for at least 24 hours here before I make another video. I wanted this video to focus on the competitive changes and everything that happens today with Peterbot. If you want a full breakdown of what's going on with the new season, all the new items, I'm going to upload that probably later today once I get a better idea of what's going on. The servers are still down right now. We have the blog post and I have a good idea, but I really want to make sure I'm actually across what's going on.